what is the best that you can do? And, sometimes it isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's about what can I put to be the best that I can be? And I never ran about times. That world record came because that's what it took to get to what I felt that I could do and to win that race.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 131 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am really excited for you to be here. Now, last week we had Greg McMillan, who is one of America's most loved coaches. Greg and I talked about how you can figure out what pace works for you, what we can do to enjoy injuries, and how he adjusted to life when PRs are no longer happening. And he's being looked to all the time for his advice. So it's really interesting to think about looking at it from that perspective. If you're the coach, you do have a certain amount of pressure on you. We also talked about finding the joy in your running regardless of where you are at. Now, today we are going to talk to someone who I grew up watching. I knew her voice so well, so it's really surreal for me to speak to her. Sally Gunnell won the 1992 Olympic gold medal in the 400 meters hurdle. She's the only female British athlete to have won Olympic, World, European, and Commonwealth titles. She's the only female 400 meter hurdler in history to have won the Olympic and World titles and broken the world record. She's a former television presenter. She was made an MBE in 1993 and an OBE in 1998. And she has quite the list for her resume. But as you will see, it wasn't all highs. Sally is honest. She's real. She's perfect for this show. And hurdling isn't a topic we typically cover, but I thought her story is great. And she's got so much for us to learn beyond the hurdles themselves. And I really think you're going to enjoy learning from her. Now, before we go meet Sally, let's first send out a huge thank you to our sponsors, Tribe and Body Health, and we will get right to the episode. Thank you to Tribe for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Tribe is the UK's leading all-natural sports nutrition brand, and they provide a range of over 20 natural energy and recovery products. Now, these bars and products all have natural ingredients, things that you actually know. I'm just looking at the ingredients list right now. Oats, buckwheat, teff, dried banana, sunflower seeds, peanuts, brown rice syrup, cocoa butter, sunflower oil, sea salt. That's it. That's just what is contained in the peanut butter and banana bar. But they have lots of other different flavors. I love chocolate salted caramel. They have apple and cinnamon. They also have protein bars, have protein shakes. And there's lots of different packs on there that you can choose from. There's a marathon training pack. If you have an upcoming marathon that you are preparing for, that might be the perfect time to try it out. They also have a decent amount of protein to help with recovery, around 8 grams per energy bar, and obviously more in the protein bars. Now, I just want to tell you about Tribe a little bit more. They are a wonderful brand that was started in 2015, and they were doing it because of an event, a 1,000-mile run. The three guys, the founders, Tom, Rob, and Guy, started, and they were frustrated with the options out there, so they created their own. They have raised a lot of money for great causes, and they are continuing to do so. So I just want to tell you to use promo code Tina Muir to claim your first box for £2 when you subscribe to Tribe. Now, obviously, I say pounds. This is a UK-based product. I just want to remind you that again. So you get your first box for £2 when you subscribe to Tribe using code Tina Muir. You can go to wearetribe.co/Tina Muir. You can claim your offer and check out their Instagram stories to find out more about their story and the products. You can also see some on my Instagram stories. Sally, thank you so much for joining me on the Running for Real podcast.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Even just hearing you say that, I was telling you before that we started recording, but I know for British people, they're going to understand this. Americans, maybe not so much. My husband hadn't really heard of you other than me talking about it, but unless they're really into their running, I think, we're going to have to educate people a lot here. But for those listening, when I think of kind of iconic people, I was trying to describe to my husband what the kind of level of kind of idol you were to me growing up. Like, you were always on the TV, you were always being talked about, always, your voice is just so recognizable to me. And Steve, my husband, couldn't really come up with anything because running is so different over here. They don't have the same, you could take the average non-runner or non-sporty person and show them someone like Desiree Linden, who they would consider incredibly famous, and no one would know who they are. Whereas in England, at least in my experience, most people would know who you are. Most people would know who Mo is, things like that. So, this is incredibly surreal for me, but thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. I think I'm just looking through that whole time. And I guess, when I won in Barcelona, there's only 5 of us that won. So I guess you became that household name, and people sort of remembered where they were on that night, because it was sort of only about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the UK. So all the kids were up shouting. So I'm guessing that's how you became that, how I became that household name, really.
And you said 5 of you won. Was that 5 in the whole Olympics, or was that just so that's 5
in the whole Olympics? So I was the only woman. I was the only woman, and there was Linford, Chris Boardman, Steve Redgrave, and Matthew Pinson, and that was it.
And each of those names are very, very well known, and just goes to show you how much of a difference that makes. Now, I've gone over some of your your stats, some of your big achievements in the intro there, but I would love for people to hear, you being a 400 hurdler. How did you kind of end up in that event, of all things? Was that something you did in school, or how did you get there?
Well, I always say nobody ever chooses to do the 400 hurdles. The 400 hurdles chooses you. It is a bit of a killer event. And, I started off as a long jumper, and then I missed out on the LA Olympics in the heptathlon by 20 points, and then thought, let's do the 100 hurdles. And then all of a sudden it was like, I could be the best in the UK and the Commonwealth at the 100 hurdles, but I wanted to be the best in the world. And sometimes you have to be real to yourself and realize that I was never going to have that basic speed that I needed for the 100 hurdles. I mean, I was probably ranked about 25th, 30th in the world. It was dominated by the Americans and the Eastern Bloc. And my coach just said, why don't we just go and try the 400 hurdles? And we did. And I think within the first 2 races, I wasn't far off the British record and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, okay, maybe this is the one. And it's a tough event, and if you get it wrong, it hurts a lot, because you've got to get over those barriers at the end. And people often say, they compare it to a marathon. I've done one marathon, the London Marathon. I think a marathon is harder than doing the 4 hurdles. I'll say that. But when you get it right, it's a beautiful thing, and it's all about conserving that energy and running at that optimum floaty sort of feeling. And it's great when you get it right, but horrid when it goes wrong.
So for most of those listening wouldn't have ever tried a 400 hurdles. I myself haven't either. When you say about getting it wrong, what does that feel like? You said it's horrid, but trying to put that into words for us.
Yeah, well, it's once around the track. So you've got 10 hurdles, and they're at equal sort of spacing. So a good 400 hurdler has to be able to run at their optimum, but be able to float over the hurdles. And you've got to be able to conserve that energy to the end. So if you get your stride pattern wrong, and it all gets very technical, so we won't get into that, but you sort of stutter, and then you lose that energy. And then, of course, you then have to, it then starts to really hurt. And then you might have 2 or 3 hurdles left that you've got to, and you literally climb over them. And that's often where you might hit them, or you're like, I'm not sure I can get over them. And that's when it hurts. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard people say that that's the most painful event on the track, because of just, the pure, the pure like punishment of not just trying to finish a 400, which is hard enough in itself, when you're going, as hard as you can, but also then adding in those final few hurdles. I mean, you got to be tough to do that. And you mentioned there that you did the London Marathon. Well, firstly, how was training for that? Having gone from doing all this short stuff to I'm assuming 20-mile long runs and things like that.
Yeah, I know. It was all a bit weird because when I sort of retired, I was like, oh God, what now? What do I do? And it was, you train just to keep yourself fit and active and mentally strong. And I started doing like the Race for Life and 5Ks. And I absolutely loved taking part in mass participation races. And it was like, God, I've never run with all these people around. The only problem was that everybody would, stand on the line and sort of say, right, okay, gosh, I'm next to an Olympic champion, wow, I'm going to beat her. And, as you're running around and I used to say, I know, but I was a sprinter and all these sorts of things, but nobody ever had it. So that was always a difficult bit, but, I still loved it. And then the London Marathon just sort of said to me, would I like to run for one of their charities and they'd look after us and stuff. And I thought, do you know what? It's got to be done. I'd done a couple of the Great North for Brendan Foster, and I loved that. But the thought of doing a marathon was like, oh my gosh, I'm not even sure I could do this. But like anything, I always have to do it properly. So I made sure that I trained properly for it. I had 3 friends I ran with, so it was an amazing experience. Yeah. And I did my 2 20-mile runs and, did absolutely, have to do everything correct. And I wanted to get sub 4, so I set myself a challenge. And we just had the best day and I absolutely loved it. Everything went right. And I ran, I think I did 3:48, something like that. And I think it was 8:30-minute miling. So I was, looking at my watch and I knew exactly and taking all my gels on and crossed the line. And I just knew that I was never to do it again because I had the best experience. I knew that, okay, I could go out and try and run near 3:30, but why did I want to do that? I hadn't got a personal challenge to be able to do that again. And I just thought I'd never have that experience again. It was just amazing and so just cool. Left it there. Never done one again and still run, but, for lots of different reasons now than anything else.
Mm-hmm. And what year was that you did that?
I think we must have done that in 2006. So
okay, so was that was after Paula's record, right?
That was after Paula's record, I think.
Were you aware of that when you were running? Like, wow, Paula, was running.
Well, I knew she was up there, and I knew that it was all going on ahead, and obviously saw her at the start, and all these sorts of things. But you're on your own personal little challenge, really, and you are caught up in your own little challenge. And I'd had 3 kids by that point, and I think I'd had my last kid in Mali in 2005, so it was almost a personal challenge to get back and do that a year afterwards as well, which was sort of like a bit of a challenge as well. So
absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. All right, so you've got all these accomplishments with your hurdling career, with what you were able to accomplish, being the only woman ever to hold 4 major titles concurrently, the Olympic, World, European and Commonwealth. You've got all these incredible highs, but for those looking who think, wow, your career was all high, and you saying that you went into it and you got close to the British record within a few tries. Was it that full of highs? And would you maybe share some of the ups and downs just so people can see your journey?
Yeah, I mean, it's a process that you have to go on. And when I sort of tell people now, the person I was to stand on that line in Barcelona for that Olympics, you've had to have gone through some awful situations to make me that person to win that. And what I mean by that is, there was, a couple of years of injuries.
Yep.
There was a year when I should have won a Europeans and I was 6th and I absolutely hated it and, questioned why I did it and thought I wasn't tough enough and hadn't got what it takes and all sorts of things. Yeah, years of injuries and years when I questioned who I was and why I did this and all sorts of things. And and I had to go through those to make me that person because it made me find a positive. It made me learn how to find a positive out of a negative situation, process it, but put it behind you and move on. and not dwell on it for 6 months and just say, if only that had happened, or if this or whatever else. So there was lots of different situations. And 4 years out, I guess, from Barcelona, which was a Seoul Olympics, and I was fifth, was probably the first time that I realised that I could win an Olympics. But also realised, and it's not till after as you look back, you think of those 4 years before, of the type of person I was when I was fifth in the Olympics and the type of person I was when I won. Very different.
Thank you to Athletic Greens for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Athletic Greens is the ultimate daily all-in-one supplement that comes in a tasty green powder. You just put 1 scoop into a glass of water, into a shaker, give it a shake, give it a stir, and just drink it down. I like to put it with 14 ounces so I can start my day off with a glass of water and 75 proven vitamins, minerals, and whole food source ingredients. It includes prebiotics and probiotics. It is just a wonderful product. Tim Ferriss calls it his all-in-one nutritional insurance, and I kind of feel the same way. That is a wonderful way of describing it, and it's just easy to fit in your schedule. And speaking of fitting it in, you can get 20 free Athletic Greens travel packs valued at $79 with your first purchase. All you need to do is go to athleticgreens.com/Tina. Those 20 travel packs, you can test them out when you're on the road. You can take them with you when you are traveling this summer with your family, because usually when we're on vacation, we do not make the best choices with our food, and that's okay. It's all right to let loose and have fun, but still make sure you're keeping your body in a good place, giving it the supplements, the nutrition that it needs. Go to athleticgreens.com/Tina. I absolutely love it, and I think you will too.
4 years out, I guess, from Barcelona, which was a Seoul Olympics, and I was fifth, was probably the first time that I realised that I could win an Olympics. But also realised, and it's not till after as you look back, you think of those 4 years before, of the type of person I was when I was fifth in the Olympics and the type of person I was when I won. Very different. And that was about, not winning when I should have done. Failing at many a time, but being able to move on. It was about being much more professional about what I did, and looking at all sorts of different areas and asking for help, and around nutrition, around the physiological side of it, around the mental side of it, which was a major part of my running, and asking for help and getting people to take me with them, to that next stage. I couldn't do it on my own, even though I had an amazing coach and I was with him since I was 14. We couldn't do it on our own, and we had to get other people in to help us and to go to that next level. And this was before lottery money, and this is what lots of people have already now. But I think the difference then is that I formed that team. I went out. I worked out myself personally what was it that I needed to go to that next stage. What was going to be the difference. And I think all those things that you add in do make a difference. But I think it's the confidence that it gives you, because you've gone out and you've done all those things. So, I could stand on the line and know that I'd eaten well for the last 3 years. Know that I'd done every training session for the last year, know that I'd mentally gone through that race every single day. I know exactly what I had to execute and all those sorts of things. And everything is about confidence. Everything is about being allowed to have confidence in who you are and that ability, and how do you build confidence. And that comes from outside of you, and that's what you have to go and find. It doesn't just happen. You have to find that confidence and feed yourself with that confidence.
And how common was that for you to figure out that you needed help and actually to ask for it? Because athletes are notoriously stubborn and I know what I'm doing. I don't need to learn that or, take on this. Was that kind of rare for you to be asking around for help and like asking for assistance? As you mentioned, it's very different to what it is right now. Were you the only one doing that, or was it everyone was kind of trying to figure that out as well?
Yeah, I think I probably was one of the early people to do that. to have a sports psychologist then was, it's a bit like, what do you mean you're not tough enough? Get out there, and sort yourself out. It was a bit, it's a bit like talking about mental health now. It's like, but I couldn't do it on my own. And, I did lack confidence in myself. I didn't have that belief. And I knew that was literally the last sort of piece of the jigsaw, I always say, because I was second in the world a year before Barcelona, and I mucked up and I should have won, and I was lucky that I had another opportunity, but I could have been my only opportunity, and I mucked up because I didn't have a plan in my mind. I hadn't done the mental preparation. I had doubts. I worried too much about the competition. It was all those little bits that was then holding me back. So that was literally that's when the psychologist came on, because, I couldn't afford to do another year of doing that. And what did that look like? I couldn't do this on my own. And, what does that look like?
And there's a lot of people listening who probably maybe not to the level. And for those listening, you may think, well, of course at her level, she'll need that. But a lot of the things you just mentioned, I think apply to everyone. We all go through each of those things. And, for someone listening who's thinking, confidence, how could you not have confidence when you were right up there with the best? So explain to us, what do you mean by that? Like, for someone who's saying, if you were fifth in the world, how could you not have confidence, in yourself? What did that look like for you?
I think confidence is, I always remember someone saying to me, I was the wrong size. I was almost like the wrong colour, and I wasn't tough enough. I was too nice. And, and I think that sort of, I think it almost in some respects was a little bit like that. I was too nice, you know what I mean? And I think people always think, I'm only 5'5.5", and a lot of my competitors were, 5'10", 5, and then, I wasn't your typical athlete. I wasn't, I was probably a little bit overweight compared to some. I wasn't that, muscular and stuff like that. So I wasn't your typical. So confidence didn't come from, having the perfect body or the perfect size or anything like that. So I did have some, confidence doubts in that.
Can I just pause you there before you go on? So you mentioning your size, looking back now, do you think all the other women you're competing against were doing the same thing with their bodies?
Probably, yes. Yeah. I think it is. I think it's. I think we all are everybody's like that, and I think the bit that I had to learn is to love yourself, and to, and it is to almost. The biggest thing I was taught is to stop that inner voice. And people have heard about that inner voice and whatever else, but I think it was to actually someone talk you through that inner voice, and now the number of times that I have to talk about that, and I have to learn how to shut that voice up, because it is the voice that says, oh gosh, you're not a typical athlete, and I might, I haven't got a six pack, and maybe, oh look, she's really good over there, and it is that voice. And so I think that to me the difference was one, knowing exactly what I had to execute. So it was about that visualization, which can be a massive thing for everybody out there, whatever we're doing. And then the other one is to learn how to keep that voice quiet into your head, because your head, it is always going to be there. Absolutely. And, I won't, the Worlds the following year wasn't the perfect race. It wasn't the race where I ticked the boxes. I wasn't well going into it. And I nearly dropped out. And so, when those doubts start to come in, they play a major, major part in your performance and what you do on a day-to-day basis. And that's, that's within work, and that's within your own personal challenges and getting on with life. And I think the difference for me was to keep that voice quiet, but to learn to accept who you are. And, and I think the biggest thing was when I did win, especially when I broke the world record in those Worlds, was, wow, do you know what? This is a massive, powerful tool that we have, this mind. And, I found it, and, we need to learn to use this, and almost in shock because of how powerful it is. And, it's free. Do you know what I mean? And it's down to us to learn. And, it's got me out of lots of different situations, and lots of times that I doubt myself, and, standing on stage and presenting, and, I don't know, doing some of the TV work that you have to do, and you're like, I don't feel comfortable up there and stuff. So it's helped me many a time.
Yeah, and I could definitely see how that applies. And, I love the psychology side of our sport, of just the world. I'm very interested in that. I do have a sports psychologist myself, and I'm really just passionate about that part. And so I'm glad to hear you mention that about applying it to other areas, because it's so true once you kind of learn that. And just before we move on here, when you said about, mental struggles, things going wrong in races, what does that look like in a 400 hurdles? Is it you get halfway around and you kind of just put on the brakes and kind of cruise it in? Does it mean you start, making mistakes so you trip over things? What does that look like when that happens in a race?
Yeah, it happens. It happens before. It happens in the warm up. It happens in the call room. It happens on the start line. It's not so much what happens in the race, because the race will just happen. But if you're not, it happens in the 24 hours beforehand. It's all of that. It's how you approach it. And if you start having those doubts of, oh God, I've woken up in the morning and I've not slept very well. None of us sleep very well the night before. So you can almost hear that voice starting, and then that's when you've got to say, but do you know what? I've got an afternoon nap coming up, and I've slept really well all week, so it doesn't matter. I've never slept well before a race. It doesn't matter. Yeah. And it might be that, I really don't feel like eating. I feel sick, and but that's normal. And I've eaten really well, and I'll go and have the right food here. And it's just, you have to learn that, to do that process right from the word go. And if you're not standing on the line, and with that, stopping those thoughts and force feed. I always say you have to force feed positive thoughts. You can't just do this by any other means, by just stopping it. Because what I used to do was, every time a negative's come in, I'd never stop that sentence. I'd screw it up in a piece of paper and I'd throw it out. But you have to follow it up with a positive. So if you start saying, oh God, I'm tired today, my back hurts, you never stop it. You screw it up and you go, but do you know what? I've trained really well this week. I'm in the best shape of my life. I deserve to win this. I've trained hard. I've done everything correct. And you just force feed it, because the more that you put those thoughts into your mind, the more that you will stand on that line and you've actually listened to it, rather than you've gone into it and you've gone, oh God, that was a really bad warm up. And, and I feel a bit tired now. It's natural to feel tired. I actually fell asleep in the call room because I'd gone through, the meditation. I was almost, now people explain to me, I was almost in a state of sort of, meditation, because I'd done the deep breathing, and I was going through the race in my mind, and I was in total control of what I was doing. And that takes pressure, expectation, and that mental preparation to get yourself through. So, the visualization thing of seeing yourself executing that perfect race. Where do you want to be? For me, it was like, right, what's my touch? What's it going to take to win? You go back, you look, what is my time I can run? And then you work out, right, what's my touchdown times? You might do, what do I need to hit each mile with? And then you visualize going through all of those things and what it's going to take, so you know exactly what the execution is, because you can't visualize winning and achieving unless you've got the execution of it all in place. And then you have to visualize that winning and that perfect race, but not just what that means to you, what that means to the team, what that means to your family. How does the next 24 hours afterwards, allow yourself, take yourself off to doing that big presentation you got to do at work, and you're standing in front of the boss, but you nail it. And you come out and you go, do you know what? I did the best that I can do. And that's all you can ask of yourself. Absolutely.
And to the listeners, you can also do the same thing with your own running. Maybe it's not winning it, but maybe it's, I always like to say, coming around the corner and having tears in your eyes when you see that clock ticking, and it's so much faster than what you expected it was going to be. Or after you've crossed the finish line, you're looking at your watch, like staring in disbelief because you're like, wow, I did that. You know, you can apply it to your own self or, like you said, outside of running. So thank you.
Totally.
Now, would you change anything about your running career if you could go back?
I sometimes sort of think once I'd started getting my injuries towards the end, once I'd achieved all that I had over the hurdles, I sort of, had a couple of years out injured and, struggling. I didn't want to finish it on that. Maybe sometimes I said, should I have gone and done 800 or something like that, 800 meters, just to have another challenge. But, the other thing was, what was I trying to prove? I'd achieved everything that I wanted to achieve. Maybe that was the struggle. I found it hard to motivate myself to go again. And maybe it was the time to retire. And that's often the hardest thing. And no, I wouldn't change anything because things happen for a reason. And I'm always very one for, that the highs and the lows are there because you learn from them, as I said. And so I wouldn't change anything. I think it is just they're there. They're there to develop you and make you grow, and you take those opportunities and you go with it.
Yeah, I love that, and I kind of feel the same way as well. So then, if you wouldn't change anything, you said there about having a hard time motivating yourself once you'd done it. So talk about that, because most of my listeners and myself, we've never been to the point where you've been the best, had all 4 of those titles. Is it that hard to motivate yourself after you have that kind of where's next? Because all of us have got this, I want to do this and then I want to do this. But what happens when you get them all? Yeah. Then what?
Yeah, I think the thing that I started to struggle with was expectation and pressure. Because, you do become this household name. This is how I felt anyway. Yeah. And I felt like everybody expected you to win every single time. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't, I always remember people saying to me, God, you sent me to bed with a smile on your face. You know what I mean? You think, God, you've affected so many people. So I started almost doing it for them rather than doing it for myself. And I think that's where I made a mistake towards the end. I felt that I had to win this next Olympics because everybody expected me to win because I did it last time. And, and I'm sort of a bit frustrated that I never got the mind in control of that. And I think of Atlanta, which was my real low point when I was carried off the track with an Achilles and I was fighting to get back from injuries and I really wanted to go to another Olympics. But you want to win. You don't just want to rock up an Olympics. It was about, and it didn't happen. And that was my real low point.
Thank you to Body Health for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. You've heard me talking about Body Health for a long time, for good reason. They are wonderful friends of mine and I truly believe in the product. Body Health Perfect Amino is my go-to recovery product that I've been using for I think about 4 years now, and I don't see it not being a part of my life for a long time. As runners, it helps us to recover faster from hard workouts and races, which can only be a good thing. And if you recover faster, you get more out of your hard workouts and races, and you prevent injuries while you do. All of those massive advantages to us as a runner. All you do is take the supplement either as a powder or as tablets at some point during the day, ideally away from food. I like to take mine after a run, give it 23 minutes to work, and then you can rest assured your body has been given the 8 essential amino acids it needs to maintain its systems. These essential amino acids in Perfect Amino are in the exact proportion needed for maximum utilization from the body. So even if you aren't able to get a meal as soon as you would like, and let's be real, sometimes that happens, you're in good hands. Visit tinamuir.com/aminos for more information and to get yourself some. Be sure to use the code TinaMuir10 for 10% off the entire website. So visit tinamuir.com/AMINOS. I love Body Health Perfect Amino, and I see that many of you use it daily too, which I love. If you haven't tried it yet, go do it.
I felt like everybody expected you to win every single time. And if you didn't, I always remember people saying to me, God, you sent me to bed with a smile on your face. You know what I mean? You think, God, you've affected so many people. So I started almost doing it for them rather than doing it for myself. And I think that's where I made a mistake towards the end. I felt that I had to win this next Olympics because everybody expected me to win because I did it last time. And, and I'm sort of a bit frustrated that I never got the mind in control of that. And I think of Atlanta, which was my real low point when I was carried off the track with an Achilles and I was fighting to get back from injuries and I really wanted to go to another Olympics. But you want to win. You don't just want to rock up an Olympics. It was about, and it didn't happen. And that was my real low point. But yeah, and I think I never really got it sussed, but I think it was because, I don't know, I'd probably exceeded higher than I ever really thought I could in my whole life. And that was part of probably I wasn't, I did question myself and I wasn't probably that. So, what I did, I was a bit like, wow, how did I ever do that? It was, so I was never like, yeah, it was always going to happen. And, let's go again. I was never that type of person. I was like so grateful and so, appreciative of what I'd actually done. And, I always talked about, God, I'm so lucky, that I got it all right. So I did find it really hard to keep going again. It felt like it was almost maybe a bit greedy or something else. And I think it is really hard to know when to retire because you just think, is it the injuries? Is it the motivation that's gone? And do you know what? I wanted other things in my life. I wanted children. I wanted to, I wanted to go skiing. I wanted to go go-karting. I wanted to do lots of other things. And I think once you start thinking about those other things, yes. That's when it's time. When it's time. And it was really weird because I went to another World Championships. I got injured again. I called a press conference. I announced my retirement with not telling any of my team. And they were a bit like, oh, okay. But it was the biggest relief ever. And I just knew it was right. And I did. I just felt really relieved. And it was like, wow, okay, I can move on now. I was ready. It was the time to move on.
And, when you did that, you said, injuries were kind of a major part of this, but also motivation. You had other things you wanted to do. Did any part of you, having been this Olympian, world champion, all these, accomplishments next to your name, you saying that you kind of doing it for the fans essentially towards the end. Did any part of you struggle with identity after that point, or were you able to just channel it straight into having children and other things? Like, did you struggle with kind of who you were without that?
No, I don't think I did. I mean, I had to sit down and set myself goals and challenges because that was always something that was, bred into me from my coach did from a young age. And I still now, I have to know daily what I'm going to do, monthly, 6 months, or I've always got a challenge in of some sort, bike ride or something. So that's what I did. And I knew I was never going to have that high again. And I know a lot of the guys really missed that. And so I tried to have that from other areas. But I think that helped because I did fall pregnant straight away and I had a chance. I think that sort of helped in that sort of respect. But no, I think because I was because you were that household name overnight and people knew so much about you, you were being asked to do so many different things. So you were in the public eye and you were, out there and being seen. So it was all a bit like, wow, you're still there. I mean, I think part of me felt like it was all going to go away and it never did. Do you know what I mean? I thought another 4-year cycle and you're like, oh, you'll be forgotten, but you weren't. And that was a bit like, wow, this is a bit strange. And then I've had great people around me that have always kept my feet on the ground. And, we've always sort of done new things that I believe in. Like, when the kids came along, it was always about, doing a lot of work around, getting kids active and, and eating well, all those sorts of things. Whereas now it's sort of, as you get older and in your 50s, it's like, it's about, keeping yourself fit and active as you go older and what does that look like and menopause and all those sorts of things. So I think I've just had great people around me, kept my feet on the ground, and just always been very driven about what's next and what can I do, and and what excites me really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess that's kind of very fortunate and nice that you had things kind of coming along for you and getting to work with the BBC primarily. As a presenter, and just like I said, that was where I always knew your voice doing things like that. It was just there you were, and so that probably allowed you to kind of stay into it. Now you mentioned getting to a place where menopause is coming along, into your 50s, and how do you adapt now? Are you getting to the point where people don't know who you are, the younger people coming through?
Yeah.
I mean, I think maybe my age is, and I'm 30, being the kind of edge of maybe where they would have seen you a lot and remembered you. Does any part of you struggle with that now? Kind of, I've been forgotten about now, or are you able to channel it into other things?
Yeah, I mean, you're not, we're nowhere near as high profile as we used to be, because, you've got, them Jess and people like that, and Dina coming through, and you just have to accept it really. And part of me, I think sometimes some of the part of me is that sometimes I just quite like to go and hide and not be, the whole social media stuff and doing all these sorts of things. Yeah, you have to work at it. And sometimes I just think, God, I just like to go and hide. And, my home has always been my sanctuary and stuff like that. So I've always sort of fought a little bit with it. And, and I see lots of sort of my counterparts and people out there that, they love the high profile, and they love to push themselves out there, and they love to do all these sorts of things and post every day and, whatever else. And so I think I battle a little bit with that because I know it's important, and I know it's, it's important to keep your profile up and to be seen and do all that. But the other part of me is, I am 53 and, this year. And you know what? I love gardening, and I love just being in the country, and I quite like that idea of sort of hiding. And I think that's where I've got to with how you get older as well, is, it's like, what do you value and what's important? It just changes as you go on. And part of you does fight with it because of what you're doing. You think, right, do we go again? Do we now do the next 10 years? What does that look like? Or, should we put our feet up and just, disappear into the hills? So I think that's the stage that I'm sort of getting to now. At the moment, I'm quite enjoying it, and there's still stuff, but, I don't push myself anywhere near, in that sort of areas as I probably should be and could be. And, and I allow people around me to do that more than anything.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. And you mentioned earlier you work with a lot of charities now, Chestnut Tree House, Sussex Search and Rescue, I should say, GLL Sports Foundation. Why is this working with charities important to you, especially now as you get older?
I think, I talk a lot about well-being now, and one of the strands I talk about is meaning and purpose. And I think that goes back to, we live in a world of, especially when you run, it's a very selfish world, and it can often be very me, and what next, and all about yourself. And I think, that meaning and purpose is about, appreciating what you have and appreciating what is out there, and, doing something for others. And that, I think, is where, the charity work is so important to me, that it's something I've had to do to get yourself. And I think that was probably one of the biggest things when you do retire, because, when you run, you are the most selfish person out there ever. It is. Everything you eat, every moment is all about you. And, kids come along and that changes part of it, but you have to consciously think about that side of it, because that's been your personality, and that's often made you who you are as that athlete. So I've had to consciously think about, it's not all about you. Come on, there's other things that are more important. So I think the charity work has really helped on that, because you do feel as though you're doing things to help others. And, and I often, you get asked to do lots of different things, you can imagine, but I want it to be things that I have a real belief in, or has affected our lives, or is close to us, or you can make a difference to. Mm-hmm. So that's how I sort of choose all those things, and, try not to have too many, just so you can, fundraise for them and aware for them, and do, bike rides for them, which I do, and stuff like that. That's often the challenges. The physical challenges are often associated with, with charities, and trying to get people to join in and be active and stuff like that.
And why is that important to you, the being active part, getting families to be more active? Why did that become passion for you?
Yeah, I think families and just people now. And, I run now, yes, physically it keeps my weight down. Which is one thing. And I think, that you struggle even more as you get older with that. But to me, it is my sanity. It's more about the mind. I run now, and I get up onto the downs where we live, and I run on my own, and it's my me time, and I make a lot of decisions. And when you're hitting the menopause and there's always all sorts of things going on, my running is my savior almost. It's probably the next bit that stops you from going on your HRT or whatever else. That's how I look at it at the moment is, I can control myself better, and my mind, and, and the self-doubts is if I can keep my endorphins going, and the running and that side of it. So I'll do that. The bike ride is, I love going with my friends and setting the challenges, because I can't run further than probably 50 minutes now. That's my max for the back. Yeah, but it's very slow, and I get back problems, and I can't run every day. So the bike ride is a really good combination. And I do Pilates, which saves my back, do all the reformer stuff. And that's probably one of the things I wished I'd done when I was running, is the Pilates, because it's been a real lifesaver for me now, of getting me back running and allowing me to run by doing all the reformer stuff and all the equipment stuff, which is brilliant. I think to me, it's a lot of the wellbeing stuff is about what exercise can actually do for you in your own confidence and in your mental strength. And that's why I want to, promote it more and explain to people and help people. And that is about finding stuff that you love and enjoy, and joining in with others, having a reward when you do it. We always talk about what we're going to eat, and when afterwards I have a cup of coffee, and just want people to enjoy what exercise can do in all forms.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure a lot of people resonate with what you were saying just there, particularly, as they are getting older as well. Many of my listeners are in that stage. Now, when you were doing the presenting, you obviously had to keep up with what was going on within the sport. You had to, research the athletes, things like that. I know one of my good friends, Carrie Tollefson, who many of my listeners know, she's also an Olympian over here in the US, and she does a lot of the commentating over here. And she told us about the hours of prep that you have to do to kind of be prepared for all the athletes that could kind of pop up out of nowhere. Yeah. But what about now? Do you still kind of follow along with all the aspects of athletics or track?
Yeah, I do. And I'm nowhere near as close to it in that sort of, everybody and everything, because, when you do, and I did 10 years at the BBC, which was great and amazing, and you got to interview and chat to all these amazing athletes, and to have the opportunity to have interviewed Kelly Holmes after she'd won 2 gold medals was a highlight of my life, really. But now I've got 3 boys that run, which is and they're at they go to all the meetings, and they run for the country, and Finley has the eldest, so you're still quite close to it. And then I've got a husband who's a coach at UK Athletics, and he coaches 4 of the elite athletes: Carl Langford, Elliot Giles, Shalana Oskin-Clark in the 800, and Charlie Grice in the 15. So we are surrounded. They're all up here now. They're all out there training and just being in the pool and cross training. And so I'm surrounded by it. So I still... I am very involved, but on the outside. And I always say, people say, do you coach? Do you get involved? And, my husband is an amazing coach. He's a great listener. and he's done amazing with his coaching. But I don't know whether I'd make a great coach. I'm not sure I'd have the patience that he has. And I think he learned a lot from he got Achilles problems, but he learned a lot from my coach and being around me that he can apply. And and I've sort of taken my hats off on him because I don't think I could make a great coach, but I quite like being on the outside, and I quite like watching and just chatting to somebody, a talented youngster, about mentoring her over the hurdles. And I quite like that side of it more than anything.
Yeah, nice. And what about the, just our sport in general? Were there, before we go to kind of now, were there any moments when you were doing being the commentator, speaking about these events as they were going on, that any times that, you don't have to mention specific names, that you thought to yourself, oh, that seems a little too good to be true? I'm talking about people, doping, using things that they probably shouldn't be using. Were there any moments you had that where you would see someone and think, oh, that I don't know about that one?
Oh gosh, all the time. And even when you ran, you knew. And it's the weird thing, it's always been there. God, is it worse now? No, it's not worse now.
You don't
I would say
okay.
No, I think it's probably better in some respects because I think the testing is better worldwide. The thing when I ran is if you start standing on the line and knowing that people were on it, and when I look back now, it's so obvious, and I look back and I think, well, probably I could have won 2 world championship gold medals, and and I never look like that. And I always, when I ran, I didn't want to know. It was too much of a negative, and that goes back into your mind again because you start thinking about, well, they must be, I can't beat them. I always thought, I will do everything I can in my own capability to get myself into the right fitness. And I think I was lucky because Jonathan Edwards and myself talked about this. We were in very technical events.
Yeah.
And when you're in a technical event, you've got to be able to hurdle. You've got to be able to triple jump. And, others might be doping and they might be stronger than you and they might be faster than you, but a lot of them weren't technically better. And that's what allowed me to do what I did at that high level. And sometimes in some of the other events, that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? As in sprinting, it's much more about the power and the speed and stuff like that. And so I think, it's hard sometimes. So I didn't want to know. I was never offered it. I never saw it. I didn't go out of my way to find out what everybody was doing. I just blanked it out of my mind because it was too much of a negative thing. And, when you're watching, I don't know, I've watched many a race on the sides and doubted, many questions about people's performances and, in your mind. And it's very difficult. But I always used to say to myself, do you know what? They will get their comeuppance in life. I know that I can stand there and be very true to myself and be very honest to myself. And there's a lot for that. And I'm not sure how those other people can live knowing what they've done. All I know is they probably think that everybody else is doing it. So that's why I'm doing it. It's almost like a natural way of life, which I find really difficult. And I used to just say to myself, they'll get their comeuppance at some point in life. And that if that's being caught or whether that's in another way of how it affects your body later in life, I don't know. But I think, we can always do more. There can always be better testing. There can almost be, better system than, in place and whatever else. And we've got to fight it and we've got to keep pushing it out there. But it will always be somebody that tries to, to break the system and to try and be one step ahead. And, you've got to be very true to who you are and keep with what you believe in.
Do you think there's any part of most of us looking now at any kind of performance that stands out and thinking, well, that can't be clean? Do you think now is any part of our sport kind of tainted by that?
I think our sport has been tainted a lot in you speak to the general public, which I think is really sad.
Yeah.
And, and every time I do a talk, it's always a drugs question because it's, they always want to, they don't know it in depth, but it's like, oh gosh, and, I fight for our sport because I still know that there's a lot of very clean athletes that are out there that are doing some amazing performances. And, and people say, would you encourage your kids to do it? Yes, I am. And so they should. And I think that's what you have to remember. And there will always be, the one or two that do stupid things and go and do that and try and get away with it. And, I don't know. I can never stand here now and say that could be or not, because you don't know. There are some amazing, talented people out there. And it's not until people get caught and they make silly mistakes that, that's when I have my doubts, and that's when I'd say something, and it's a real shame. But I would just say to everybody, you know what, just get out there and do it your way. And use your talent and use everything in your capability, in your mind and what you do, and be professional about it. And you'll be amazed at what you can achieve.
Now, you saying that, and I totally agree with everything you just said right there. But, I've had this conversation with my mum when it's come that someone's, done something kind of incredible that kind of seems a bit like off. They've come from nowhere. They, it seems a bit suspicious. My mum has said, oh, well, they work really hard. And, I try to explain that like everyone works hard at that level.
Works
so
every hard.
It doesn't matter who you look at. They all work hard. But because, do you ever feel like the people that do cheat, do take drugs and things like that, they see it as, you mentioned, they're doing everything you can to be your best.
Yeah.
Or they see it as, I'm just taking, people take supplements, people take, vitamins. Isn't that, this is just a really strong vitamin kind of thing. Do you think any part of it is people kind of downplay it, seeing it as, well, I'm just giving myself the best chance?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard when it's been part of a way of life. And look at a system or whatever else. And, when it's all very calculated and you've been brought in from a young age, and it's like, well, you've been brainwashed. I can imagine a lot of these people. It's like, well, yeah, this is just the normal. This is what everybody's doing in that Olympic final, where actually it's not. It's just the way that they are. And I can see that, but I've always put that group over there, and that's the group that won't always get away with it. There will be something. They might get away with it for a few years, but something will happen. I think that's how you have to deal with that. But also there's that other, there is the fine line of what is, our group here, they spend a lot of time at altitude training. They can get the budgets to be able to go and do that. So, people will say, well, isn't that cheating? Because not everybody has the opportunity. And I say, well, no, that's not. That's just, to me, cheating is when you're putting things in your body, you're taking things and you're consciously, pushing those boundaries and what the rules are, and those rules and what they are, and breaking them and going over, and it. That's to me the cheating. And I don't. And I guess those people live with it because they think that everybody else is doing it. That's all I can think of, is that their conscious is like, well, probably this other 20 people on this start line in this marathon are all doing it as well. So I'm just might as well do it. And that's how they believe it. And that's really hard. And, but I think as somebody who never is going to do that and never wants to cheat, you almost, you've got to almost, I don't think you can allow yourself to go to what they're doing and almost use it as that excuse almost. Do you know what I mean? I think there is part of it, because if you always keep saying, oh no, but they've run that amazing time, so they've got to be cheating, you're almost saying to yourself, well, I'm not going to run that time. Yeah. Because, they're cheating at that. But, and it goes back to setting out what is the best that you can do. And, sometimes it isn't always about winning. Sometimes it isn't always about, it's about what can I put to be the best that I can be. Yes. And I always go back. And I never ran to win about times. That world record came because that's what it took to get to what I felt that I could do and to win that race and whatever else. So I think it's not always about, you got to think about what is it that's important to you as an individual.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you. And just a final question on that. Did anyone ever accuse you of that?
Oh my God, totally, completely.
And how did that feel?
All my other competitors would have thought that I won that Olympic gold medal because I'd cheated. But I knew I didn't, and all the people around me and the British public and a lot of the athletes came up to me and said, what was so great about that is that you have proven to us that you can win without cheating. Mm-hmm. And to this day now, I still believe that you can win without cheating, and I will always believe in that.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. All right, Sally, and just 4 more questions for you that I ask all of my guests, starting with one piece of advice you would like to give the listeners for life.
I would say don't continue to give yourself a hard time. To do with your own beliefs and your mind, and it's about learning to accept who you are and your own beliefs, and stop giving yourself a hard time.
Great, thank you. I
love yourself.
That. Yeah, that's great. All right, how do you want to be remembered on this show?
Oh gosh, I want to be somebody who, and I think it's sort of my motto in life really, is somebody that's very real, very down to earth, mm-hmm. and it's just a good person to be around.
You absolutely are. One person to follow on social media and why?
I think it has to be Kelly Holmes. She's doing a lot of great stuff now, and because she's had so many struggles in life, and she's been through mental health issues, and so much of what I talk about is about the mental strength that people need, and she's on it. She's doing some great social media stuff and podcasts, and really interesting. And
wait, she's been on podcasts?
She's done her own podcast as well.
I've been trying to get her on my show for years. I'm going to have to get you to hook me up with her because I can't get her. And now she's got a podcast. I did not know that. Huh? She's
been doing a lot of mental health, and she's been interviewing a lot of people that have had mental health issues, and they've just all gone out as well. So, she's doing some great stuff.
Okay. All right. I'll definitely put links to Kelly's social media and her podcast, apparently, which I didn't know about. And finally, what do you tell yourself on the start, or what did you tell yourself on the start line of a race? What were the last things you said?
Do the best that you can do.
I love that. That is absolutely perfect. And that's exactly what I tell myself as well. All right. Well, Sally, how can people find out more about you? Maybe tell us what you've got planned in the next few years, where people can, get to know you more. You mentioned you do lots of wellness things, lots of speaking, and can be brought in. Tell us a bit more about what you have going on.
Yeah, well, I'm on Instagram and Twitter under Sally Gunnell, and then I've got a website as well, which is sallygunnell.com. So, find me. I do a lot of corporate sort of well-being as well. We go in and write well-being programs for different organizations, and do a lot around just, mental health and strength, and just keeping active at all stages of life. So lots of exciting things, and just enjoying life. So,
Yeah, that's wonderful. You wouldn't know this, but my bachelor's degree is actually in corporate wellness. So
is it?
Yeah, I never actually used it or anything.
Well, maybe we can cross paths one day.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Well, Sally, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your wisdom, knowledge, and just your story. I really wanted my American listeners, and obviously the British ones know and love you already, to hear your story and just kind of get to know you. Thank you for all that you've done in this sport. Truly one of my true idols, and I'm so excited to have spoken to you. So thank you so much.
No, thank you very much, and good luck with the rest of all your podcasts. You're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
My friends, if you have a minute and you could leave a review on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or whatever else podcast player you use to listen to this podcast, or if you would subscribe to this podcast, you will help me get out in front of new runners to make our tribe even bigger and even better. It might not seem like you as one person can make a difference, but really it helps a lot. And it shows me you appreciate the hard work I put in for those. Thank you so much.
Oh, she is just so kind, so real. And honestly, I kind of felt a bit like I was talking to a version of myself. I think our personalities are quite similar, although I've accomplished nowhere near as much as she has. But just amazing to talk to her, and crazy to think about that doping going on all that time and it's still happening. For me, it feels like it's really recent that this has been going on, but really it's been going on for quite a while. And like she said, you have to be aware that this is going on, but you have to push it out of your mind. Now, I'm glad you're loving the products I've recommended. And every time I get an email or an Instagram message or a Facebook message from you saying you are loving one of them, it truly warms my heart and also makes me look so good when I forward it onto that brand. So thank you. You are making me feel so special. Let me know which ones you are loving if you haven't already. I genuinely want to hear. Now, next week we have Jonathan Beverly, who is the editor-in-chief of Podium Runner, which was formerly Competitor Magazine. You may recognize the name of that. We're talking about what his job involves, what he's been up to. Jonathan has a wealth of advice, and I had him on the podcast series for mental training, but you're going to love what he has to share next week. We could just kind of talk about the running industry as a whole. So stay tuned, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.